Picture this. It's 4 in the morning on August 16, 2025, and Russia's southern front is about to get the rudest awakening imaginable. In less than 2 minutes, 6 of their best soldiers would be gone, along with a mind-boggling £2 million of their own ammunition. The shock of it all sent tremors all the way to the Kremlin's halls of power. The place that got hit has a name that matters: Mariupol. Imagine it as the beating heart of Russia's entire southern war effort, responsible for pushing 30 to 50% of every bullet, every shell, and every rocket toward the Zaporizhia front and down through the Crimean corridor. That warehouse they targeted wasn't just some random building sitting there. It was literally the southern front's ammunition lifeline, their financial backbone for the entire operation. But here's the thing, this wasn't your typical supply run. Intelligence reports were painting a picture that Russia was stockpiling all this firepower for one massive surprise attack, something designed to completely shatter Ukrainian defensive lines just days before a crucial peace summit between two nations was supposed to happen. This stockpile wasn't just sitting there collecting dust, it was a weapon pointed straight at Ukraine's heart, worth close to $500 million in military hardware. Losing something like this was equivalent to losing the keys to your entire army. You've suddenly got all this expensive military equipment that's going absolutely nowhere, and fast. Naturally, the Russians figured this place was completely bulletproof. They'd wrapped it up in so many layers of air defense systems, it looked like a paranoid dragon guarding its treasure hoard. They had the multi-million-dollar Pantsir S1 system standing watch, with backup rings of rapid-firing Zu-23-2 anti-aircraft guns surrounding the perimeter. Covering the entire area like a blanket was the borisoglebsk 2, this incredibly powerful electronic warfare system specifically designed to jam any drone crazy enough to get within range. They were feeling so confident, so absolutely sure about their high-tech fortress, that they never imagined Ukraine would even have the nerve to attempt an attack. Yet the Russians somehow forgot that golden rule from every action movie ever made: the bigger you build your fortress, the more spectacular it's going to look when it explodes. And the tool Ukraine used to crack open this $500 million disaster, a humble $500 FPV drone, most likely a 3D printed Reaper hybrid model. This wasn't some random lucky shot fired into the darkness. This was Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Service, the HER, playing a complex 12-day chess match like absolute grandmasters of warfare. The entire operation kicked off with what you could call a symphony of intelligence gathering efforts. Maxar satellites became their high-resolution eyes watching from space. A Leleko 100 reconnaissance drone hung around at 6,500 feet with its impressive 60-mile operational range, painting the complete electronic picture of what was happening below. And most crucial of all, local partisans positioned on the ground in Mariupol were counting every single truck that rolled in, confirming not just that massive £2 million payload, but figuring out its real purpose: to fuel a surprise offensive that would hand Russia the upper hand when they sat down at the negotiating table. Once they'd confirmed the prize was real, the HER played their opening move: classic misdirection. They started deliberately leaking fake radio communications, carefully crafted to make the Russians believe a massive Ukrainian offensive was about to slam into Kherson, a full 100 miles to the west. Russia swallowed the bait completely, hook, line, and sinker. They began relocating elite units, including a specialized team of 6 naval infantry soldiers and the Akhmat Vostok UAV squad, into Mariupol, thinking it was a perfectly safe staging area for their operations. It was like watching a mouse carefully move its cheese into what it thinks is the safest corner of the room, not realizing that's exactly where the mousetrap is waiting. Of course, no battle plan survives contact with reality perfectly. The initial brilliant idea to hack into Russia's CCTV network to track their target truck hit a solid wall when Russian cyber defenses detected the intrusion attempt. Without even missing a beat, the HER immediately switched to their backup plan: a direct Starlink satellite connection to their partisan team, who were now hiding just 2 miles from the warehouse, ready to provide real-time targeting coordinates. The Reaper drone launched into the morning air, carrying its 10-pound warhead and unspooling an impressive 6-meter-long fiber optic cable behind it. Then Mother Nature decided she wanted to join this fight. A sudden 20 miles per hour crosswind kicked up out of nowhere, forcing the technical team back in Kiev to frantically recalibrate the AI guidance system on the fly. It was like trying to pull off the perfect bank heist, except a tornado just showed up to mess with your getaway car. This particular drone, though, wasn't some off-the-shelf toy you could buy online. Back in Kiev, the operator watched his telemetry screens as the drone's AI flight controller went into absolute overdrive mode. The 4 rotors began this frantic, almost microscopic dance, making literally thousands of micro adjustments every single second to counteract the powerful gusts trying to knock it off course. The pilot wasn't just sitting there as a passenger either. He was actively crabbing the drone, flying it slightly sideways into the wind just to maintain anything resembling a straight course toward the target. For a nail-biting 30 seconds, it turned into this intense wrestling match between Ukrainian programming code and the raw power of Mother Nature. Ukraine won that round, with the drone finally flying steady and true. It was time for phase 2 of their plan, making the Russians look in completely the wrong direction. To pull that off, Ukraine decided to put on a little magic show for their audience. 5 cheap $200 decoy drones took to the air about 5 miles from the warehouse, programmed to broadcast the electronic signature of what looked like a massive swarm attack incoming. The radar screen on that $13 million pantsir S1 system suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree in Times Square during the holidays. The crew, probably jolted awake from their morning routine, did exactly what their training had drilled into them. They opened fire. 6 57E6 missiles at $60,000 each screamed into the sky to obliterate about $1,000 worth of plastic parts and cheap electronics. That's a $360,000 fireworks display just to kill what amounts to a handful of party favors from a novelty store, while the multi-million-dollar air defense system was busy swatting at electronic ghosts. The real threat, that Reaper hybrid drone, was slipping in completely under their radar horizon at just 130 feet above ground level. This is where the genius of its design really came into play. Even the best laid plans, however, can hit unexpected snags. Russia's borisoglebsk 2 system is absolutely no joke when it comes to electronic warfare, and it managed to get a solid lock on one of those decoy drones, flooding the 5.8 GHz frequency with completely overwhelming jamming static. For any normal drone, this would have been an instant mission kill, but this is exactly when the operator back in Kiev played his absolute ace card. He flipped a single switch and the Reaper drone went completely dark electronically, severing its radio link entirely and activating its completely unjammable fiber optic cable connection. You can jam radio waves all you want, but there's no way to jam a beam of light traveling through a glass thread. That 20 miles per hour crosswind, however, was still causing major problems, shaking that delicate cable and forcing the pilot to fight his controls constantly just to maintain a stable video picture. At that exact critical moment, a new message flashed across his screen from the partisans positioned on the ground below. Russians are joking about vodka, completely clueless about what's coming. The Russians thought they were winning some kind of electronic warfare battle, but Ukraine was actually producing this entire elaborate show, and they were about to write in one hell of a plot twist, with the Russian air defenses chasing phantom targets in completely the wrong direction. The kill box was now officially open for business. Through the Reaper's crystal clear fiber optic video feed, the operator in Kiev got to watch history unfold in real time. The target truck carrying those 6 Marines and the Akhmat Vostok UAV team rumbled to a complete stop right in front of the warehouse doors. It was arriving exactly on schedule, precisely as the Her intelligence analysts had predicted it would. Down below on the ground, the scene was almost comically casual and relaxed. The Marines hopped out of their vehicle, stretching their legs and probably complaining about the early morning hour, completely oblivious to the angel of death hovering 130 feet directly above their heads. They had every reason in the world to feel relaxed and safe. That mighty pantsir S1 system was still desperately busy trying to shoot down $200 worth of styrofoam decoys 5 miles away in the wrong direction. The Zu-23-2 gunners were staring up at what appeared to be a completely empty sky, unable to see a target flying lower than their own watchtower's height. They felt completely safe and secure. Meanwhile, in that basement command center in Kiev, there was absolutely no joking around happening. The operator's heart was beating like a drum against his ribs as his camera view filled with the ultimate prize target: 2 million pounds of high explosives stacked from floor to ceiling throughout the warehouse. His thumb hovered over the final controls, trembling slightly. He began what he knew was the final countdown sequence. 10 seconds remaining, 5 seconds left. But just as the operator prepared himself for that final attack run, the entire mission suddenly went from a clean, surgical shot to what felt like a knife fight in a phone booth. 2 miles out from the target, a Russian FPV patrol drone that had launched on what should have been a routine sweep suddenly spotted a thermal anomaly glowing in its sensors. It was the Reaper's engine heat signature, glowing like a bright beacon against the cool morning air. Almost at the exact same moment, the borisoglebsk 2 system dramatically intensified its jamming efforts, and one of the decoy drones simply winked out of existence completely. But the real problem they were facing was purely physical. A vicious gust of wind slammed into the Reaper drone, snagging its delicate fiber optic cable on a rusty old power pole. In the Kiev basement, the video feed stuttered violently like a broken television. The pilot broke into a cold sweat as reality hit him. He was now flying what amounted to a very expensive, very explosive kite on a very frayed string, with a Russian hunter-killer drone closing in fast, now just 1,000 feet away from his position. This is exactly where Ukrainian ingenuity and training kicked into absolute high gear. The pilot's first move was pure battlefield instinct. He used that cable snag to his tactical advantage, yanking the drone into a sharp turn around a ruined warehouse building, using the structure to momentarily break the enemy drone's line of sight. His second move was coordinated brilliance at its finest. A command flashed instantly via Starlink to the partisan team positioned on the ground below. They aimed a laser designator at the sky, painting a second decoy drone with targeting light. The decoy immediately flared its engine to maximum heat output, drawing the Russian FPV drone away on what would turn out to be a complete wild goose chase. With the immediate threat successfully distracted, the pilot focused all his attention on his own crisis situation. He carefully stabilized the drone against the constant tension of that snagged cable, restoring the crystal clear 1080p high-definition video feed just in time to see that his target was still sitting there like a perfect sitting duck. The truck was idling patiently, just waiting for that warehouse gates to creak open and let them inside. But here was Ukraine's ultimate ace up their sleeve, the Reaper's onboard machine learning targeting system. Even with the pilot fighting his controls constantly and that cable threatening to snap at any second, the drone's own independent targeting system had already achieved a hard, unbreakable lock on the target. The Russians down on the ground weren't completely asleep at the wheel though. Alerted by the decoy drone fiasco happening nearby, a 4-man patrol team armed with rifles and handheld RF detection equipment started systematically sweeping the area around the warehouse, now positioned just 500 feet from the Reaper's current location. Then things somehow managed to get even worse. A nearby Grod rocket, fired by a panicking Russian crew at the last remaining decoy drone, exploded with tremendous force. A 100 psi shock wave slammed directly into the already snagged fiber optic cable, and the screen back in Kiev flickered violently like it was about to die. The connection was literally about to snap completely. The operator in Kiev faced an impossible choice: abort the entire mission and lose the opportunity of a lifetime, or floor it and pray to whatever gods watch over drone pilots. He chose to floor it without hesitation. He jammed the throttle forward to maximum power. The drone leaped ahead at 37 miles per hour, hugging the crumbling wall of a ruined building to stay completely out of the patrol's line of sight. That 6-mile-long cable, still snagged on the power pole, stretched taut like a guitar string on the absolute verge of snapping in half. Down below, the Russian patrol heard the faint whining sound of motors. Their rifles swept the sky frantically, hunting for a target they assumed must be 10,000 feet up in the clouds, not realizing they were looking for a ghost skimming the treetops at just 130 feet above ground level. A final message flashed from the partisans on the ground. They're distracted looking up at the sky. They don't see the real threat coming. The camera zoomed in with mechanical precision. The truck, the gate, the massive warehouse, behind it, everything filled the screen completely. This was the moment of truth. 10 seconds remaining on the clock. The final countdown sequence began ticking away. The pilot ignored the screaming proximity alerts and the violently shaking video feed that threatened to blind him. 5 seconds left. The Russian commander sitting in the truck glanced up from his tablet computer, a flicker of confusion crossing his face as something felt wrong. 4 seconds. The patrol on the ground was still aiming their weapons uselessly at the clouds above. 3 seconds remaining. The front grille of that truck had become the pilot's entire world, filling his vision completely. 2 seconds left. The pilot could practically count the individual bolts on the truck's front bumper. 1 second. The Russians thought they were the hunters in this deadly game, but Ukraine had just given them front row seats to what would become the most expensive fireworks show of their entire lives. Boom. The Reaper drone slammed directly into the truck's engine block with devastating force. Its 10-pound shaped charge warhead was really just the detonator cap for the real show that was about to begin. It punched clean through the steel plating and ignited the fuel tank in a brilliant flash. But more importantly, it sent a jet of molten metal and superheated gas directly into those 2 million pounds of ammunition waiting just a few feet away inside the warehouse. What happened next wasn't just an explosion. It was like watching a man-made volcano erupt. A 5,000 psi wall of pure destructive force erupted outward in all directions, followed immediately by a 30,000 degree Fahrenheit thermal pulse that instantly vaporized everything at the epicenter. The truck was launched 50 feet into the air before disintegrating into nothing but a cloud of deadly shrapnel. The 6 Marines and the entire Akhmat Vostok team were simply erased from existence in that instant. In their place, the massive blast gouged a 100-foot-deep crater directly into the Ukrainian soil, and the destruction wasn't finished yet. For the next 3 full minutes, secondary explosions kept ripping through the depot facility. Rod rockets cooked off inside their storage crates, launching wildly in every direction and turning the entire industrial park into something that looked like a scene straight out of a Michael Bay action movie. 4 Russian ambulances came screaming toward the scene, their sirens wailing desperately, only to discover there was absolutely nothing left to save or recover. A final, brief message from the partisan team came through via Starlink satellite. Total loss confirmed. The strategic consequences weren't just immediate, they were world-altering in scope. Russia's carefully planned preemptive offensive, the one specifically designed to give them the upper hand at the upcoming summit, was dead before it could even get started. They arrived at the negotiating table not with a roar of strength, but with the deafening silence that comes after a $500 million blunder. They'd lost 6 elite operators and all their expensive UAV equipment in one devastating strike. But most importantly, they were suddenly out 3 weeks' worth of critical supplies for 10,000 frontline troops. The vital supply link connecting Crimea to Zaporizhia was completely severed, creating a logistics nightmare that would ripple through their entire southern campaign. The final mathematics of it all were absolutely staggering to consider. A $500 drone had just taken out a $500 million strategic asset that represents a 1 million to 1 return on investment ratio. Russia had built themselves a $500 million safe to protect their most valuable assets, and Ukraine had just picked the lock using what amounted to a paperclip, then burned everything inside to ashes. Who needs a massive military budget when you've got Ukrainian ingenuity and determination on your side? Now, here's a question for all you armchair generals out there reading this story. When that fiber optic cable got snagged and the enemy drone was closing in fast, that Ukrainian pilots had a split second to make a life or death decision. Do you push forward with the attack and risk absolutely everything for that perfect shot, or do you cut the cable, abort the mission, and live to fight another day? Drop your tactical decision in the comments below and make sure to explain your reasoning behind that choice.